So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to Empath Tools for Now, the first one of these that we're doing. I do offer a much larger empath class, but we've taken just a couple of pieces out of that that seem to be super helpful for right now, and we're giving a couple of free little classes, so hopefully you all can make use of those, especially for you all who are super sensitive. So my name is Julie North, and I'm a medium and medical intuitive in Columbus, Ohio. And I do a lot of private sessions. I give workshops and lectures. And if you want to know more about any of that or sign up for a session, you can do that through the website at www.julienorth.com. It'll also be on the intermission slide and the end. We have a YouTube channel where most of these workshops are going to get posted, as well as some old lectures and presentations that we've done. So anything that we do in video is being recorded. Keep that in mind for all of you that are on the Zoom class, that when you speak, it does show you on the screen, and you have given permission for that to be shared to the YouTube channel or whatever else we decide to do with that, along with whatever you might say in the class. So if you're naked, I'm sure we'll edit you out. But other than that, you're on camera. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is really like, what is an empath? What is a sensitive person? And it seems very much to probably a lot of you that everybody anymore is saying, I'm an empath, I'm an empath. And there's a fair amount of that that's actually true. So if you went back 20 years ago, you would never hear that many people saying that. Even if they were born an empath, it wasn't a common term. So in a lot of ways, people didn't have a term for being highly sensitive. So let's just talk for a minute about what that actually is. Every human being has wiring in them that allows them to be able to pick up information from another person or from an animal or from a plant or an environment that is not necessarily coming from their sight, their hearing, their touch, their taste, one of your typical 5 physical senses. But everyone has a little bit of that. And that's why sometimes when you meet someone, maybe they seem super nice and they've got a big smile and everybody loves them, but something in your gut just tells you like, maybe they're really angry inside, or maybe they're really sad inside. Every human being has some of that. It's just a sense that you're born with that they don't teach you in school. But in the realm of being listed as an empath, you're going to have a lot more of that wiring. And for people who are born with empathic wiring, they often don't realize that they're any different than anyone else. And so you have all of this extra sensory ability to pick up, you know, if you and normal person, John, are talking to Mary Jane, and Mary Jane is crying her eyes out, distressed about something, John, who is not technically empathic, just has a little bit of pretty normal empathic wiring, might say, oh, you know, Mary Jane, I'm so sad for you. This is terrible, whatever's going on. I feel bad for you, you know, and he might feel sad for Mary Jane. You, as an empath, are going to sort of suck up Mary Jane's sad. So an empath's wiring operates a lot like a vacuum cleaner for the surrounding environment. And sometimes it can be isolated. You can be an empath that only picks up the energy off of other people, or only picks up the energy off of environments. So you're fine with people, but if you go to a place where there's been a tremendous amount of energy that space is holding, sometimes ruins will have that. Sometimes you can walk into a room where there was a fight earlier and nobody's in that room, or everybody seems perfectly fine, but you start feeling agitated because you're picking it up out of that environment. So you can have specific type of empathic traits, or you can have several of the different types of empathic traits, but your wiring picks up all of that energy and tries to process it on your system. So the non-empathic, the typical average system, is meant to process your own emotions, your own energy. And if you think about that a little bit, like when you get super excited about something, it's been a really exciting day, or maybe it's been a really horrible day and you've been crying your eyes out. The movement of all of that energy and emotion through your system, sorry about that, the movement of all that energy through your system can exhaust you. And, you know, and then you need to go take a nap. For empaths, if they get around other people and intake a lot of that energy, the people that they took it from will often feel a lot better. So for a lot of you that are in here, if you're empathic and or just highly sensitive, other people will kind of pick up that you're that way, and they'll come and tell you all their problems. Like, you're probably the person that everybody wants to come and talk to, and when they leave, they're like, oh my gosh, I love talking to you. I just feel so much better. And that's great, except that you need to go take a nap now because you're exhausted. So your system is not just processing your own emotions and energy through it, it's processing everything else that it picks up too. So if you look at it like it's a system meant to run 110 wiring, an empath has extra sensory wiring, and they're trying to run like 220 volts on wiring that's meant for 110. You do have a body that is capable of running that energy, but if you're and balancing itself. But if you weren't taught any skills for how to deal with any of that, or that it's different than what other people are doing, which is the case for most of us. Most of us grew up in an environment where we didn't realize that we were different. So we look at the world around us, and everybody else is at the same, you know, in the same room where somebody's having an emotional overload, and everybody else seems to be processing that fine, but you feel like a train hit you, you know, for hours or days. And so you keep thinking that something is wrong with you. Why am I more stressed than other people? Why am I, you know, more upset? Why does everybody come and tell me all their problems? And in that empathic trait, it's not just a matter of like picking up their high volume emotions. You can pick up the things that they're hiding. So if in their current day today, they're living their life and they seem pretty fine, but maybe they've had a really difficult childhood and there's a tremendous amount of sorrow, you know, baggage, unprocessed emotion, trauma issues in their system, or a tremendous amount of anger in their system. As an empath, you'll pick that up. And it's very challenging to figure out if you don't have, you know, training or skills or a habitual protocol that you use for yourself. It's really difficult to figure out what's my emotion and what's someone else's. So most empaths have a tendency to go through life really just thinking that there's something wrong with them. So hold on one second here. Okay, there we go. So that's what, you know, that's what we give the class for. That's why we're all here, is so that we can learn some skills to deal with our life, so that we can operate in the world without constantly having to take a nap, without burning up all of the nutrients in our system, without taking a long, hard physical hit just from existing in the same environment as anyone else. And while this class that we give, the big class, is really important series of life skills, proactive tools and reactionary tools for your life, right now, with everything that's going on in the world, there is no better time than now to learn some skills to give yourself a breather and give you some help. So, you know, while this isn't every tool that's available out there, you know, I do want to go over some of these with you so that it all makes sense. Just a side note for anybody that's watching on Facebook, I appreciate you tuning in. This is being live streamed from a Zoom class, and I cannot interact with you on Facebook, but I will definitely go back and read your comments later. And the same is true for all of you that might be writing something in the chat section of the workshop. I will get a chance to look at those later, and maybe if we have question time, I'll look at that too at the end. So why is it so hard right now? We all know why it's difficult to be an empath in the everyday world. It's not just a matter of somebody being overloaded in any given moment. Go to the grocery store, go to Walmart at the holidays. Like, that's my worst nightmare, is like that I have to go to someplace like the mall or someplace frantic, because it's a lot of energy. So even if all of the energy in the area is fine, maybe all the people that you work with are fine, Maybe everybody in your family is fine. But it's the sheer volume of energy that you are uptaking and trying to process through your system as if it were your own that is really challenging. And one of the things, we're just going to touch on it tonight, but there is a second one of these classes that we're doing next week at the same time, and we'll dive more into that. But when you process a lot of your own emotion, you have a big day, or you've done a lot, your body naturally burns up a fair amount of nutrition. And if you are the average person, your stores are not overly depleted on a consistent basis. So you can burn up some of that. You might feel a little bit tired and then you just rebound. But if you're an empath, you're probably, burning the candle at both ends on an everyday basis, whether you realize that or not. And your nutrition really takes a hit. So right now, with all of the fear and panic and sorrow, that's going on in the world, all of the anger that is also happening. So the world that you live in might not be showing you how much anger is going on out there over various sections of this particular pandemic, or the conspiracy theories that are spreading around, or the political components, but it's still in the collective conscious. So we all exist in a connected state of energy. You might think that you're keeping things to yourself, and from a very human conscious standpoint, that you might be doing a great job, but from a collective conscious standpoint, that energy is connected to all things. So whatever is going on with the trees, you're going to feel. Whatever's going on with the people in your community, you're going to feel. Whatever's going on with the people in Europe, you're going to feel. So space doesn't really have much of an effect as far as being a buffer for how much your sensitive system is intaking energy. So when there is a worldwide panic or a worldwide energy, whether that's the deep sorrow over the death of someone well known, well loved, that around the world, you'll pick that up. In the current situation, lots of panic, lots of fear, lots of sorrow, and a fair amount of anger. And you're sucking that in, even if you're isolated in your house. So, and I'm sure if you've been in other classes or been in self-development things, we all talk about what we hold within ourselves is what we contribute to the world. And that's more true and more obvious now than maybe it's ever been in your life. We all know that the actions that we take have an impact on the outside world. And, if we're nice to people, that impacts the outside world. If we're mean to people, that impacts the outside world. But we don't get much opportunity to really see up close and personal how much the collective conscious can create, positive or negative. So what can heal can harm, what can cure can kill, and whether it's, a worldwide meditation for peace and joy or worldwide panic, it affects the collective conscious, which affects every living thing in it. So the first thing that I want to share with you is, in my opinion, probably the most important tool. And a little bit of background around that tool. So I call it filtering your field. And some of you may have heard me talk about this before, but if you look at yourself like you're a cell in an organism, you have a physical system and then you have an energetic system. And rarely is it ever this perfect circle ball, that goes around people. But it's a flexible, movable field. It changes shape, it changes size. If we ourselves are feeling particularly retracted or we're trying to hide, a lot of times our energy field will come in very close. There's a lot of really good energy practitioners who intentionally will keep their energy very close to their body as a means of sort of staying strong in themselves, but also making sure that their energy is not affecting you when they work with you or work on you. But our field changes shape. When we get excited, it might be big. If we get chaotic, and if you can see energy, it might look a little spiky or it might have big gaps in it, that sort of thing. So it's like a bubble that you blow. except in that field, when you look at a bubble as a kid and you blow it, it's got all these colors, that are floating around the outside, and you can watch them swirl. It's one of the, beautiful things about bubbles. If you took that swirling and you didn't put it just on the surface, you kind of ran it all the way through the bubble. So the bubble had this ability to move those colors and that energy all the way through it, like a liquid changing orb all the way through. That's really what your field is like. It's just constantly shifting and changing. And a lot of energy in your system gets transferred to places in other places in the field and other places in the physiology through that energetic field of yours. If you think of it like a cell, the cell wall in any cell is built to exchange energy, exchange nutrients in a cell's case. Our cell, our energetic field, is intended and created to exchange energy with the things around us. So for a lot of people who are hypersensitive or empathic, they will feel overwhelmed and they'll try to put a barrier up. I'm going to shield myself. I'm going to build this brick wall, no energy's getting in, any of those kinds of things. And if you've ever tried to do a meditation like that or set that intention, you've probably felt the experience of failure because it won't work. We can create a lot of boundaries and rules in our life, but you cannot create boundaries and things that are actually against the greatest good, the universal greatest good. You can look at it like it's in my greatest good to not be intaking all of this energy, but that's your conscious mind saying that, and that may or may not be true. So trying to put up a wall where no energy comes into your system won't stick. If you manage to get one created energetically, it just won't last. And then the next day you're feeling like, what happened to that process? So filtering your field is the only way really to do it effectively. And the language that you use to create that filter is crucial. And, we'll give you some time. Make sure you've got something to write that down with, or you go back and revisit this in the video when it goes up on YouTube, because if you don't set the language properly, your filter won't work properly. So think of a filter, I don't care, use coffee filters. That's my favorite example for this. You want to be thinking about a filter that allows things through that are in your greatest good, but doesn't allow just anything through. See, right now, you might, unless you have put a filter on your field in some form or another, you're an unprotected open source. And all of the energy around you is coming through you. And depending upon your level of empathic wiring, how much that will be. But if you don't have a filter on your field, you don't have any control over what is going in and out of your system. So again, like a cell, energy needs to come into our system and it needs to go out. That is part of being in the world, having a human experience interaction. You can't live without that. You are inherently connected to all things. So you want to think about what kind of a filter does the best possible job. And it doesn't matter how silly it is. Like you could pick coffee filters. Like I drink a lot of coffee, so that's the thing that I think of is coffee filters. If you think that little green army men are going to be the best protector around your field, and you're going to put thousands and thousands of them, or however you're going to do that around your field, and we'll go through the process of how to create that here in a minute. But think about something that you think works. So I'll give you a couple of examples. When I was young, I was having a really hard time with energy and deceased people and some various things, and the other side had me put a filter on my field. I didn't know about that filter very well to the extent that I do now. And if I knew then what I know now, I might have picked something different. But I picked fire. My thought process was that I was getting inundated and kind of attacked. And so I saw fire as a purifying component, and I covered my field with fire. I'll tell you that it works great, but I will also tell you that I struggle with high temperatures. So if it's really, really hot outside, my body doesn't regulate very well to that. But I can walk around in the snow barefoot. Not that I would recommend that. So if you're going to use elemental things, you might want to think about how that might impact your system. You can take a filter down if it doesn't work for you. I've never bothered to do that with mine because I'm fine with it. But I will also caution you, there's a lot of people who are very fond of water. You know, water's their cure, water's their heal-all. They think of water as something that's cleansing, and that's fine. But if you're going to put water on your field, you're setting yourself up for a potential problem with chest congestion. So people that put water on their field, if you visualize that as actually water, you can have water retention problems, you can have fluid issues, and most of your body systems use some kind of a fluid system, and you can have a lot of chest congestion. So I wouldn't recommend using water for a filter. People that insist upon it, I would suggest that you use the energy of water rather than like water itself. So you'd want to see it as an energy and not as an actual substance. And then if it, if it works out for you, great. And if it doesn't work out for you, you might want to take it down and create something else. So let's use our two silly examples of coffee filter and Green Army Men. So the whole process of doing this really takes you about 30 seconds. If you've already picked a filter, it doesn't take very long. You can certainly turn it into, a half an hour process if you want, or an hour-long process if you want, but it doesn't require all of that. Most things in the energetic world don't take much time, but you might enjoy the experience, so that's entirely up to you. It's important to remember that energy moves better on a relaxed system than on a tight system. So, you might not be able to go out and get a massage right now before you do this meditation, and that's totally fine. Throw yourself on the couch or in the bed in some kind of a position that has your body relaxed. So I'm going to scoot back here for a minute. I'm going to show you something. A lot of people will do things like, sitting upright, and they meditate in this position where, and if you have been doing that long enough that your body is actually relaxed in that position, then it's a great position. But for most of us, it's going to require tension in our back to hold us upright, and our shoulders don't drop, and our head is not relaxed. We've got tension in our neck. So, a relaxed system is better. Doesn't matter what kind of position you're in, doesn't matter where you're at, relaxed. And then you're going to use your imagination, if you will. And I'll caution you here to redefine what, I will suggest to you that you redefine what imagination means to you. So when we were all kids, our imagination equaled fake. Anytime we were using our imagination, it was something fake. And we created a definition in the brain that says when we use our imagination, it's not real. And certainly, you can envision things that are maybe not materializing in front of you, but that imagination piece of your system is a big part of the creation piece. And it's the part that you use to generate this filter in your field. And how you feel about that, and how you feel about the strength of your imagination or your envisioning capabilities will have a direct impact. So if you think of imagining as being fake and not real, then your filter might not stick very well. So you might have to use a different term, or you might have to go about it slightly differently. I'm going to use the word imagination, and you fill it in there with whatever is actually resonant for you that's, rock solid. So let's say I picked coffee filters, and I threw myself in the bed. I'm all like sprawled out, and relaxed, and close your eyes, because it helps your brain imagine pictures better when there's no other visual input going in there. And you're going to imagine that your field, that you can see your field, sort of like stepping out of yourself and looking at yourself. Or you can look at a projection, or you can look at yourself on an imaginary TV screen. It makes no difference. But you're going to see yourself, and then you're going to see your field. And it might look perfectly round. It might look all wobbly. It might have big gaps in it. Doesn't matter. Whatever you see is fine. And then you're going to imagine that your field is going to get completely covered, 100% of it covered with whatever this filter is that you are creating. So it doesn't matter if you imagine little rainbow ponies and cherubs show up on, you know, in a chariot with big Grecian urns, and they're going to dump coffee filters out onto your field and paper them on there. Great. If that works for you, it will work. It makes no difference. So if you want to envision that your guardian angels show up and do something, put this, whatever, in our case, coffee filters on your field, fine. Whatever you want to choose there will actually work for you. But what you want to see in your imagination is you want to make sure that your field is being covered top to bottom, right to left, and front to back. So there's nothing that is uncovered. Now, the reason for using coffee filters as an example is because coffee filters are round. So if you're trying to cover a space with coffee filters and you put them edge to edge, you're going to have these gaps, and that leaves a gap in your field. So if you're using something round like that, you make sure that your imagination has them overlapping, right? And they can be any size you want them to be. If you're using, let's say you picked little green army men, and little plastic green army men are the best possible filter protection you could think of, and they're on it. They're all over it, just like, Toy Story. They're going to be all over it. So, you imagine that your rainbow ponies and cherubs are dumping urns of little green army men out onto your field, and they're covering your field all over the place, top to bottom, right to left, front to back. And maybe your little green army men have they have a reach to them. They're only this big, so their reach maybe is only this far. You got to make sure that their reach has your field covered. So your little green army men, are going to need to be spaced a certain distance apart based off of whatever their size is, right? All the way over, top to bottom, right to left. They got their little armory, whatever it is that they're going to protect with, and they're only going to allow, these energies through that we're going to set an intention for. So here's the piece where the language matters the most. If you say something like let's say all your little green army men are all over your field, and you can see it in your mind's eye, you've imagined it. It doesn't matter where your rainbow ponies and little cherubs have gone now, because they've done their job. So you want to make sure you've got appropriate coverage, and then you have to give the filter an intention. You're giving it a job, right? And you're setting this intention for this field on a permanent basis, permanent for this lifetime anyway. And again, you can take it down, but someone else can't take it down unless you think they can, right? So what you think matters here. It matters all of the time, but you'll really notice it in your filter if you think it's failed or you think it's not working. So here's the language that you're going to use for setting the intention. You don't ask for this to happen. You don't go, oh, please make this happen in my, in my field. You have to make sure that you're not in a doubting state or a questioning space. You set it in the same way that you'd tell a 2-year-old to get out of the cabinet, right? You're not angry. You're not afraid. You just get out of that cabinet, get out of the cabinet. It's a fact. You are setting this intention as a fact. So the language is this: only the energies that are in my greatest good can pass through. And I'll say it again for you. Only the energies that are in my greatest good can pass through. And let's look at that language for just a second. Only is pretty obvious. We don't want anything other than what we're setting the intention for, right? We don't want to say only love and light can get through, because you might need anger. You might need to process Mary Jo's sad. Maybe that's your contribution today to the world as a whole, right? But only the energies. And we're not defining what those energies are. They can be people energies, they can be animal energies, they can be plant energies, they can be earthworm energies, and environmental energies. You are a contributing member of the whole. You are a piece of the whole. And so sometimes it's actually going to be in your greatest good to process energy for a space or for an environment or for another person or for an animal. And the key is to process what's serving you or what serves, what you can process that still serves you, and not process everything. Remember that up until the point of having a filter, you're an indiscriminate vacuum cleaner going through the world just sucking up everything like it's your job, right? So only the energies that are in my greatest good. So why do we say my greatest good instead of the greatest good? Every single thing is in the greatest good. Everything. All the things that you hate, all of the abuses that exist in the world serve the greatest good purpose in one way or another, whether you like them or not, whether your conscious mind is on board with that or not. They serve a purpose or they would not exist. That doesn't mean they have to be in your field. It doesn't mean that your soul needs those energies in it. So if you said only the energies that are in the greatest good can pass through, you're not doing much of a filter because all the energies are in the greatest good. So all of the energies that are, only the energies that are in my greatest good can pass through. And you say pass through instead of get in, because don't forget that energy has to go out, right? You're like a cell, and the cell has to intake things and exhale things, right? Some things are going to process through you. Some of them are going to directly serve you in ways that you might recognize. Others aren't necessarily going to be serving you directly, but it is in your greatest good in this instance to process this collective energy or process Mary Jo's sad. So, empathic people, as sensitive as we are in service to the world as a whole. But that by no means means that you are meant to martyr yourself by laying down and allowing every energetic thing to trample all over you your entire life. So everybody can carry a little. Here's the other thing about that. It's important to keep in mind that the culture has probably taught you that good people help other people. And that's true. Good people sometimes say no, too. And good people help themselves. So if we all kill ourselves in the process of being kind to other people, that doesn't make a lot of universal sense, right? So it's important to stay in balance with these processes, and the filter on your field will do that. So back to setting this process. You're all sprawled out on your bed, your floor, your couch, the grass, wherever it is that you're at. And your little cherubs have come and they've covered your field with green army men or coffee filters or whatever you've decided there. And you've set the intention. Only the energies that are in my greatest good can pass through. Done. That's the end of setting the intention, right? And then you want to, the human system is built to sort of always be checking for truth or lies or resonance pieces. And so the survival system is going to be a little bit skittish if it doesn't know right off the bat that the filter's good, right? That the filter can, because your field changes and expands, right? So real quick, before you walk away from your little mini meditation, you imagine that your field gets massively big. I don't care, cover the earth, cover the solar system, cover the universe, expand it out as far as you want. But when you expand it, you want to make sure that you look at it and your perception is still that it has full coverage. So if you used coffee filters, when you expanded your field, did your coffee filters get bigger so that they maintained their coverage? Or did new coffee filters magically appear in your field? Or did your little army, men multiply or get bigger in response to your fields getting bigger so that the coverage stays the same? If you don't show the system, the human system, that there's still coverage there when your field changes and expands drastically, then you can come away at some point with like, oh, my energy got really big and my filter must have got a hole in it. Because the brain is going to want to look at that from a kind of 3D perspective. That's what the brain's built to do. And it will look at it a little bit like stretched fabric, or gaps and holes. So all you're doing is you're just taking that component away from the brain's discrediting aspect. So blow your field out really big, make sure you got plenty of coffee filters, and then you can shrink your field back down, and you can make it really small and check that too. The system isn't overly concerned usually with, if it's covered here and you close it in, it'll probably be fine. But, if it were me, I'd probably do both, get really small and make sure that there's still coverage there. And then you can relax and allow the field to go back to whatever state shape it was in. Don't worry about gaps and holes and any of those things. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Probably the most important thing you can do for your energetic field is to put a filter on it. Because without the filter, your system is in constant intake of energy. So your energetic system is in persistent overload with things that are not necessary for your greatest good or even really for the greatest good of the whole. The culture says good people help other people, right? And we've been taught that it is, especially, you know, if you're the person who everybody's been coming to and they always say, oh, I so appreciate talking to you. I always feel so much better. If you're an empath, to you that equals the other person feels better because I just took it all on. And you'll learn that apparently that's your job, right? That's what you'll think. And that's not necessarily true. If Mary Jo's having, in our example's sake, hopefully there's not a Mary Jo in here, just apologies if there is, but if Mary Jo's having a terribly difficult experience, right? Maybe she's in abuse, you know, which we don't want for Mary Jo. We don't want to see her have that. And she's really struggling and she's overwhelmed all the time. And she always comes to you and talks to you about all the problems that she's having and how torn up she is about being abused. If you are constantly taking on Mary Jo's overwhelm energy, that on the surface seems like a kind thing to do because Mary Jo's overwhelmed, right? Good people help people. And you can't make Mary Jo do anything. But what you may not be recognizing is that that energy of overwhelm may be the thing that pushes Mary Jo to change her actions, to leave that abuse, for example. And if you keep taking it away from her, the momentary feel good that she has and the momentary service that you feel like you gave there indiscriminately has just sent Mary Jo back another 4 months because now she's going to have to go take 4 more months of abuse, in our silly example's sake, in order to build up enough to need to come to you and unload again. And so as an empath, we sometimes find ourselves in these positions where people are the same people that are in our community or in our family keep coming to us with the same problem, and they're offloading all of this energy. Sometimes they just need someone to talk to. Sometimes you're taking all of their energy on, and rather than actually being helpful, you're being harmful without realizing that. And on top of that, if it's not serving your greatest good to take that energy on, then you're also being harmful to the self, and you're not necessarily staying in balance if it's causing negative impact on you in an out of balance way. So just try to keep in mind that, you know, the culture may have taught you part of the equation. Good people help other people. And they might have not taught you the rest of it, which is good people also help themselves, right? And putting a filter on your fields we'll just use a piece of paper as an example. So let's say this is the filter line, right? Silly as it is. So now I've got this filter on my field, and Mary Jo comes over, and she's unloading all of her burdens and baggage and whatever else is going on there. I can still sit here and be fully present with Mary Jo. I can be as compassionate, as understanding, and maybe some of Mary Jo's energy, a little bit, maybe comes through, and I offload that for her and process it on my system. It doesn't trash me out, and it leaves Mary Jo with the energy that she needs for her experience, right? So maybe I get a little bit of it, but not a lot. Maybe I get none, right? The idea is not for you to stop telling people, I mean, you're certainly welcome to choose this, but it's not about saying, hey, get lost. I don't want to hear from you anymore. That's a reaction that we have from overload. When we can't manage our own field, when we can't manage our own energy, then we take a defensive posture, which is, you know, run. So we'll ghost people, we'll disappear, we'll drop them out of our lives, or we'll push them away. Go away, stop complaining to me, right? So keep putting a filter on your field actually can allow you to stay more present with people that you genuinely care about and allow you to do it in a way that keeps everybody in better balance. The downside for you as an empath is that when you put a filter on your field, you're going to get less energy in, right? This is the pro and the con. Less energy in means that your system doesn't have to continually process an endless stream of garbage, right? It's not yours. And it will come out of overload. It can start working on the accumulated baggage that your system could not process out fast enough because, you know, it used to be we're in free flow. We're just intake, intake, intake. And as we become more nutritionally deficient, more burnout, things are going on in our own lives, what we're intaking, we can't process fast enough, especially if we become nutritionally deficient or things get fried out in our system, we have our own issues, then we'll get this backlog. And this filter that we put up is going to cut down on the amount of stuff that comes into our field. Remember, it's only the energies that are in my greatest good, right? And that doesn't mean you're going to like it, right? So the energy that's in your greatest good has nothing to do with whether or not you like it. You might not like John's angry or Mary Jo's sad. You know, you may not want to feel the sorrow and pain of the world right now. But what if you've set the filter for only the energies that are in my greatest good, then those are the only ones you're going to deal with. And you can look at that and say, you can start asking questions like, why is this in my greatest good? Is this serving me, or is this me serving the whole? And what serves the whole is good for me because I'm part of that. So this is my contribution to that. But don't get confused with like, now the only thing that's going to be in my field is love and light and sunshine and rainbow ponies, because it's not true. So the filter will prevent some of the intake, which gives your system an opportunity to start offloading. Think of it just like a toxin. When you're putting a bunch of toxins into your physical system every day, your liver can't ever get a chance to heal itself from all the damage created there because it's constantly getting overloaded every day. If you start eating clean, you're not putting as many toxins into the system, so the liver can start cleaning itself up little by little. But unless you have a filter on your field, you know, you're in triage every day, every minute of every day in some form, even when you're home alone, because you're connected to the collective conscious, you know, you're intaking some of that. And like I said, now more than ever. So once you're done with your little meditation, or you get up, go do whatever you want. This is not something that you have to do every day. Like, you don't have to get up every morning and say, fire on, you know, army men, go to work. It's a set it and forget it thing. So a little story about me there for a second to give you an example. So you'd think that I would have that filter down perfectly, but I will tell you that I set that filter, I was probably 16, I would guess, somewhere 16, 17, somewhere right in there when they had me do that. And I'm 50. And to this day, if I get out of my car in the Walmart parking lot at Christmas time, and the minute I turn towards that building and see all of that energy there, my whole system goes, oh shit, you know, and my knee-jerk response to that is and it's automatic, right? It's crazy energy, oh no, and my brain sort of says fire on. Now, that fire's on my field all the time, right? But in my mind's eye, I see it go from this, I can't see my little fingers there, from like this big to like this thick, right? And to this day, every single time that happens, the other side says, you know, you don't have to do that. And I always say, yeah, I know. But then I say, because you think you do, you do. It's the same thing. They say it every single time, and I say the same thing in response. But I have yet to correct that knee-jerk response, right? So if you have coffee filters on your field and you get out of the car at Walmart, in our silly example's sake, wherever it is, the funeral that you're going to, or, you know, you're heading into somebody's house and they're in full-on meltdown, and you look at their house and go, oh my God, or you can feel it. You know, if you think that your filter is not up for that, then you better be thinking that your filter's getting up for that right now. So if it's coffee filters, maybe they get thicker. If it's green army men, you know, maybe they go into their protective stance. Whatever it is that you've got going on, you know, if you think that the filter's not going to cut it, then it won't. So you need to create that bump in that process. If you start thinking that your filter has failed, then you probably ought to set a new one. Because again, you created this with your intention and your thought processes. And if you think that it's failed, then it's going to be failed, right? Just be careful that you don't think that your filter is failing because you picked up, you know, Mary Jo's anger. Again, it has nothing to do with what you like or don't like. This is a very logistical empathic problem, you know. It's about what's in your greatest good. What can you process for yourself? What can you process for other people and stay in balance? What can you process for the environment? You know, sometimes you might go into a place like Tulum, and you might find yourself, even though you've got this filter on your field, processing pretty distressing energies from things that might have happened there. So, you know, if you feel like you need to bump up your filter while you're there, then do that, because that's what you think, then that's what you need to do. But also keep in mind that, you know, maybe that land and maybe those rocks and maybe that area hasn't had any help. Maybe it wants that stuff processed through to be transmuted in some form. And if you are capable of doing that and staying in balance, then your filter on your field will actually allow you to do that. But it might mean that you're sitting there on a rock bawling your eyes out in the middle of your vacation. So, you know, just try to keep some of those pieces in mind. So do any of you have questions about any of this? I'm looking at the list here, and I'm not seeing anybody with their hands raised, but I don't actually see the whole list. So, questions? No, none of you have questions. Oh, there's one. Okay, let me, Hannah, I'm going to unmute you for just a minute, okay? And then I'll ask you. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. So what's your question, hon?
I was thinking more about sand. Is sand is that still too close to the water thing to be?
Sand has nothing to do with water, except that in your perspective, you know, they kind of come together, but
right.
It has nothing to do with water itself. So as long as you can perceive that sand is going to be an outstanding filter, you know, your filter doesn't have to make a damn bit of sense to anybody but you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you see it as an appropriate filter for whatever's coming and going in your field, then use that for sure. Okay? Awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let me. Okay. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Julie.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. What's your question, hon?
Well, I guess, how do you know if you're an empath? It's like I'm doing this online thing with you, and I'm not sure that I am.
I think that is sometimes a challenge, particularly if, you know, most empaths are born that way, and so they don't really see themselves as different than other people, outside of the fact that they often see themselves as being less adept at humaning, you know.
Well, I definitely feel that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: when you go to an event where there's a lot of people, do you feel unusually tired when you leave there?
Oh yeah, those are hard for me.
Mm-hmm. Does going to the mall and the grocery store and places where there's lots of people take a toll on you?
It does. I don't like doing any of that.
Yeah. How about things like you meet someone, you get a gut feeling, you get a feeling about them. Nobody else seems to get that. And then later you find out that's true.
Oh yeah, that's happened.
Yeah, honey, you just hit all the check marks.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, and it can be with environments and stuff like that too, but, you know, different people are going to have different amounts of that. And that question and the fact that you have all of those traits and you're still asking if you're an empath, like that is exactly the challenge.
Okay.
Right? Is that when you're born with that, and that's how you interact with the world. So there's this natural assumption for all of us that everybody else, they look like us. They're dealing with the same things. They're in the room we are too, you know, and and we think that they're like us, but they may not be. Now, if they're other empaths, they might be. But even if they're other empaths, that empath can be more empathic than you or less empathic than you.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, the other problem that empaths, deal with too is if you're emoting to your friend, right? Your non-empathic friend, family member, whoever that is, and you say like, oh my gosh, like I really loved going to that party, but man, it just wiped me out. And your friend says, oh yeah, me too. And you can feel it in your field that they've got no idea what you're talking about, right? Their version of, oh yeah, me too, is like this. And yours is like, I just got run over by 4 trains in a row.
Yeah.
Right? So their ability to relate to your level of emotion, and this is true for everybody, not just empaths, how we relate to each other. And when someone says, oh, that was so sad, and another person says, yeah, that was really sad, you're in different places, right? But it's part of our nature to try to find the commonality, to try to find the relatable pieces, and also to validate each other, right?
Sure.
The person who's not the empath, when they say, oh yeah, me too, they don't realize that their level of is not even close to your level of right? They don't know that because they're not empathic and they're trying to relate. So it's not a dismissive component. But when you're an empath, you can often go through your life feeling incredibly unheard, not understood. People don't get me.
I feel different. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's weird because, we use language to communicate with one another, on a conscious level. And so we say things and people say things back that are validating. But if you're an empath, they're not getting it. You can feel it. And you'll go, no, like, I mean, really bad. Like, it's really bad. And they'll be like, yeah, I know. And, so that's the struggle, right? And the idea is not to try to go through the world and prove to everybody how miserable you are and that they just don't get it, right? But to instead learn how to manage the self, it can be a blessing. It is a blessing, and it can be a curse. It's a matter of how you're managing yourself,
I notice myself being very tired, like exhausted right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
4 or 5 o'clock, even if I've been home all day. So do you have, how can that be managed?
Filter your field.
Okay.
Filter your field. It's the most important thing. Everything else you ever do, anything else we ever teach around empathic stuff, if you don't have a filter on your field, you are paddling upstream every day, even while you're sleeping, right? Especially right now.
All right.
So filter your field. Good question. All right. Thanks, my dear.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to put you back on mute there. Okay. Lorena. How you doing, Lorena?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. What's the question, hon?
Question is, for those of us who are already working sort of in healing professions during this time, I love the filter idea, but do I need like a double filter, or do I need something to do at the end of the day when I've stopped working, helping? No, just let it work.
No. If you perceive that you need a double filter, then you didn't pick a strong enough filter.
Well, I never did it until right now. So
right. I mean, like what I'm saying is, like, if you're going to create a filter, you want to create a filter that works no matter what, right? Not like I've got a coffee filter for daily use, and I come home and I'm going to take my coffee filter off and I'm going to put my Green Army men on because, my family that lives with me is angry. It's one filter. The filter is filtering for whatever is in your greatest good, right? And that's gonna not change what your intention is to not change whether you're at work on the front lines in healthcare right now, or if you are a hospice nurse, or if you are a police officer, or you're working at Walmart right now, or wherever you are. Living in the middle of the hot spot, in the world, it wouldn't matter what's going on. If you set your filter appropriately, you don't need a double layer, But again, just like I was telling you about my story, like I'll look at situations sometimes, it's usually Walmart, it's one of the, and I like filter on. And certainly if you have a knee-jerk reaction, address the knee-jerk reaction, but as a practice, you shouldn't need to do anything other than just set the initial filter. Okay?
Okay.
You bet. Okay. Anne Francis. Hi, Anne. Anne, can you hear me? Okay, let's go to the next one here. Christina. How you
Hi
doing?
there.
How are you?
Good. Well, I'm up and down all over the place. I just
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about using light as a filter. Is it better to have something more solid than that, or is light okay to use?
Sure, light works fine. So one of the things that you want to examine are what are your perspectives of light? Are you looking at the things that would be coming into your field that you don't like as being dark?
No.
Okay.
Well, let me think about that.
So, you know, with this,
question.
light is a tricky word, and it really, you know, how your brain defines things, just like we were talking about imagination in the beginning, like how your brain defines things might affect how well your filter works. So, you know, think about your filter and what really works for you. If you think, oh, the things that are coming in are dark and light, you know, light will block them or light will transmute them, that might be a bit of a challenge because, you know, Mary Jo could be jumping up and down with super happy excitement, and that can overload your field. And so you only need this much of it instead of the giant amount that she's trying to send you. It's all light. Everything's technically light in some variant range. So just make sure that, you know, whatever you're picking isn't functioning from some brain equation of judgment that you might have consciously or subconsciously just through your equations and definitions.
Got it.
Make sense? Okay.
Yes, thank
Awesome.
you.
You're very, very welcome. All right. Joy Gabriel, I lost you in my list here. Hold on one second. I got to unmute you. There you are. Hi, Joy. Joy, you have to unmute yourself too. If I unmute you and you're still muted, it's because you have it.
Okay.
There
How's
you
that?
go. Yep.
Perfect. So quick question.
Yeah.
I hear all the good things for having a filter. Is there ever a reason why we may not want to have one?
Well, I mean, you know, you can choose anything that you want. I can't imagine why you would ever have an issue or a person would have an issue with having a filter on their field with that particular framework to it. So if it's filtering for the energies that are in my greatest good, the opposite, you know, to take that down would be I'm open to all energies, even the ones that are not serving my greatest good. So if you choose that, then yeah, you can take your filter down.
Just checking. That's perfect.
Yeah.
And then what about like things like electromagnetic fields? I mean, is that part of that energetic equation at all, or?
Well, the word we used was energies, not emotions. So it can filter for all those things. Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Everything in the world is energy, vibration. So it can filter for all of that. But again, you know, if you've got a brain equation that no matter how much your mouth is saying, well, the guides said it would filter EMFs. But if part of your brain is like, yeah, no, then it's not going to work for you, you know. So there would be people who look at their coffee filters and say, coffee filters got it all. I'm set. Right? I'm only going to pick up the EMFs, and Mary Jo's crazy in the amount that's in my greatest good. And there are other people who will be like, oh, my coffee filters are great for Mary Jo, but I'm going to have to do something else. I'm going to put myself in an etheric Faraday cage for EMFs, right? But you'd set, you know, you'd set the same intention for the Faraday cage, you know, only the, you know, non-human emotion energies that are in my greatest good can pass through. So it'd be the same basic equation for it, but your brain may just decide it needs to separate those out. Does that make sense?
Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. You're very, very welcome. And I lost you in my list there, so I've got to figure out where you are so I can remute you. There you are. Okay, we're going to do a couple more, and then we're going to take a 10-minute intermission, and we'll come back. Leave your hands raised if your question wasn't answered, and we'll get back to them after the break. So real quick, Kate here, Kate Nelson. I have got to quit lowering you guys' hands before there, you're unmuted, Kate, now. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep. So my question was, basically, how will you know your field is up and working? Like, how will you start to feel differently?
Yes, so that's a great question, and I think it's super important for all of you to really hear this. You're so used to living your life inundated with all of these energies and these efforts that you make every day to be a good human being, whether you're conscious and driving for that or not. And when you put a filter up and your whole life's been built around picking up everybody's stuff, you'll be surprised at how dependent you have been on picking up all of those things to determine what you should do or not do, and how much you've been dependent upon sucking up Mary Jo sad to feel connected to Mary Jo. So one of the big challenges in making this change to care for the self, and when you take care of the self, you are taking care of the whole, right? This is not selfish. This is kind to you, kind to the world, right? But it will decrease the amount of input that you get in your field, and you can feel a little bit disconnected. You might feel like it won't take very long. Now everybody's in kind of some form of stay-at-home quarantine for the most part right now, and so it might not be as noticeable. So this is a great time to do this, actually. But if you were in regular contact with people and all of a sudden you start hanging out with Mary Jo and you start thinking, Mary Jo feels retracted. Mary Jo's probably not retracted at all. You're just filtering out all that junk. And if you start asking, you want to use your voice, like, hey, things feel a little bit different. I've been trying to manage my energy so I'm not inundated with everybody's things all the time, but I'm just checking in with you to make sure, like, we're still good, right? Like, we're still connected. Or if I've done something, that maybe offended you or hurt your feelings, like, I want you to feel comfortable and safe telling me so. So you're going to open up those conversations with people who you, one, you'd want to, if you want to have that conversation with people, but also just to sort of retrain your system, like, this is a healthy level of variance in connectivity, and it doesn't have to be this constant dumping of everyone into my system. So you'll have to get reused to input in your field, and it will take a little bit of time for you to start feeling safe in not getting all of that input, Plus, as soon as you put a filter up on your field and your system's not in overload anymore, it won't take it, but a day probably, if it takes even that long, and it starts saying, okay, we're not getting inundated, let's start offloading. So one of the early things that happens, sometimes when we put a filter on our field is, we're not getting everybody else's junk anymore. Now we start processing things out. And so you might find out that, I put a filter on my field yesterday and I'm going to feel great today. But instead, you're dredging up all this shit you dealt with 6 years ago and didn't finish processing. So it can be a little bit confusing. Again, another reason for quarantine being kind of okay right now, if you're going to put a filter on your field. So there's a lot of ways to deal with those emotions and move them through your system. And we're going to talk about one of them here at the end of class that's very helpful, exactly for those processes. But those would be some of the challenges right off the bat that you might notice is a sense of disconnect and maybe insecurity around your connection to people, and a potential emotional purge that, for most people, it might not be that bad, but every once in a while it might be something that's kind of upheaving. Understand?
Yeah. So when you say a sense of insecurity, that's what you meant by, like, you might not feel safe, like our relationships might not feel quite as safe.
No, they might not feel as connected. If you're used to being
Secure.
plugged in at 220 volts and you think that's what, love is 220 volts, or friendship is, and all of a sudden it's, for the actual greatest good, it's pared down to 140, you might think, oh, this
Okay.
person's retracting, and they may not be. But, use your voice,
Okay.
address those things.
Okay. Thanks.
You're very welcome. Let me see here. I'm going to put you, actually, maybe you put yourself back on mute because I don't see you there. Okay. So one more question real quick here from Cass.
Ooh.
Hi, Cass.
Hi, Julie. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's so good to see you again.
You too. So what's your question, hon?
Well, I thought it was kind of ironic that you said, we feel a sense of disconnect, like people don't get us the way we are now. And then we're also going to feel disconnected once we put our filter up. So it's going to be, but maybe that's only going to be a temporary struggle once we get our filter up and once we adjust. Anyway, I was making
I think we feel disconnected because we don't feel understood in the world, because everybody's like, yeah, I get it, but we can tell they don't get it. And this is where, like finding other empaths to relate to, it is helpful. The disconnect that you might feel when you put a filter on your field is one where you're just not getting as much input. It's not that you're not heard or that you're not loved. You're just used to a certain level of, think of it like this. If you're used to someone talking to you every day on the phone for 2 hours, and then all of a sudden you put a filter on your field and they're talking to you for 20 minutes and they're ready to go.
Okay.
Is there something wrong? How come you're only talking to me for 20 minutes? Right? I mean, it's a silly example, but it's the same kind of process.
Okay. That wasn't my actual question.
So what's your question?
Can we become more sensitive with time as we get older? I don't feel like I was aware of this at all the first 40 years of my life. Okay.
Yeah, probably. I mean, yes, technically that can happen to anybody at any point in conceptual linear time. But because the plane is shifting and the vibratory ranges are shifting, you might have been born with a capacity to run 220 volts, but your current programming was only running, 140. And as the plane changes and your system starts shifting into its higher vibratory capacity, you will become more empathic. Also, if you were this is a whole nother subject matter, but if you were a 7 chakra system, your level of empathic energy might have been here. But everybody that's staying on the planet that's shifting to an 8 chakra system, that 8 chakra system actually by its nature has more empathic wiring in it. So as your system tries to make that transition, you'll become more empathic. And then all the young people born are almost all 8 chakra systems, so they come with that level of sensitivity, like constant. And there's a bunch of transition going on. I think there's a whole bunch of reasons for, your empathic capacity increasing, as well as maybe it's not increasing, but you're just becoming more aware of it. So lots of factors in there can play into that. But yeah, it can grow on you, so to speak. Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
You are very, very welcome. So let's take a 10-minute break. You guys can run to the restroom. Heather, Ann, and Ray. Oh, Ann dropped off there, but Roxanne, Heather, and Ray, I will get to your questions when we come back from the break. You've got about 10 minutes. So right now it's 8:10. We'll take a break until about 8:20, and I'll see you back then. All right? So let's jump back into it. So in case those of you who may have joined in at some other point rather than the beginning, this is the Empath Tools for Now class, the first one that we're offering. My name is Julie North, and you can find more information about me and class that I'm offering on the website at www.julienorth.com or through my Facebook or YouTube channel, Instagram or Twitter. There's like everything out there anymore. So I want to go back, appreciate you guys tuning back in for the second half of this, and answer these last 3 remaining questions from the Filter Your Field. The other 2 things that we're sharing aren't going to take nearly as much time. The filtering your field is really a super critical, important piece around that. So I'm going to start here with Roxanne, and I'm going to unmute you, Roxanne. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. How you doing, hon?
Hey, pretty good.
Good. So what question do you have?
Well, with I've been to Tulum, and I loved my experience there. I felt very full
Hmm.
and also happy because it was a nice vacation with my husband. And of course, I was aware of what had gone on there. And when you first mentioned it and said, well, you might be feeling some of what occurred,
Hmm.
I teared up immediately, which didn't happen to me while I was actually there. And in fact, it's just now gone away, but I felt a real heaviness in my chest while you were talking about it. And
Right.
What's up with that?
So, you know, without getting into a, you know, personal reading, you know, really about it, I'll tell you this, there's a couple of things that it can be. So when you're an empath, you're frequently overloaded, and you get used to overload. Like, that's your baseline, that's your norm. And we often don't realize that that's, you know, that's where we are in the process.
Mhm.
So we could be picking up energy in an area where we are or from another person, and it can be accumulating in our field and cannot get processed out. And we don't even realize that that's happening. And I see that more often than not. I see something like that with people who grew up with an angry parent, or a parent who had a lot of bitterness inside them. And maybe as a kid you didn't see that, but now you're 30 and you can't figure out what's wrong with your liver, right? And the liver is the organ that processes anger. And so you're wondering why you have a congested liver or what's happening with that.
Mhm.
And it's because you might not have actually felt that anger growing up, but you know, it's stuck in your field. So sometimes, sorry, I'm just trying to adjust this camera a little bit there. Sometimes when someone names something or points to it, you know, then all of a sudden our system goes, oh yeah, and it recognizes that and it moves it. So you could have picked up energies in an area that once we pointed to, you know, looked for an opportunity for an exit strategy. The other piece is that space is really an illusion. You know, the distance between 2 points is an illusion. And when someone is talking about something happening someplace on the earth, if you're intuitive at all, you might be able to pick that up. If you're empathic, you're probably going to feel it. So maybe your experience there was that you were picking up, there was a lot of joy going on in Tulum too. So maybe while you were there, what you were picking up and processing was that. The rock I sat down on was definitely not the rock, you know, to be handling for somebody, you know, and I didn't realize that. And so my experience was different. Both can be equally valid, but part of it might be, you know, part of it is that I've had a filter set on my field since I was about 16. So I'm only going to filter the energies that are in my greatest good. And it was obviously in my greatest good to be processing that energy at that time. And just because you may not have had a filter on your field doesn't mean that, you know, the universe isn't looking out for you, at least to some extent. And that might have been really inappropriate for you at that time to process those energies. So it could be that you're tapping in from the illusion of distance in the now, or it could be that you're processing out energies that accumulated in the system at that point that you didn't know. So it could be either of those. Okay.
Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. Heather, I'm going to unmute you. How you doing, Heather?
I'm good. So really question about, you said the heaviness, that we may be feeling a lot of heaviness right now and overwhelm. So I thought I was putting up a pretty good shield myself. And actually I like to liken it to a brick wall, which is not possible, but you touched very little on the nutritional piece. Like, I'm finding that I'm continuing to lose weight. And my eating habit has not changed. It's clean, but the amount of food has not changed. And it seems like every day that I do wake up, like I feel like I've lost more muscle mass. Like, is there, so you had talked about nutritional deficiencies that could occur. Is that right?
And the reason that we're not talking about in this class is because that's actually on the agenda for the second class.
Okay.
And so we are definitely going to address that because that's a pretty critical piece. I mean, you are a physical system, and that physical system's fuel and well-being and maintenance is all really based heavily in the physical version of nutrition. And so it's not something that we wanted to leave out, but we put it in the other class and just not this one. So I felt more important at the moment to be tackling, the filter on your field and dealing with food, which is what, changing the energy of the food that you intake, which we are going to talk about next here. And then some tools for processing things that come up, processing things that you're dealing with in that way. So definitely check that out for the second one because it'll be in there.
Okay. So awesome. A quick follow-up question to that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is the feeling that of overwhelm, is there right now? I'm feeling I'm actually enjoying this in a way because I'm wanting to totally disconnect.
Right.
Like I turn my phone off because the people who are bored or usually come to me for advice, right now I don't want to be distracted.
Right. Yeah.
So is that normal?
Yeah. No. I mean, well, okay.
For an empath.
Empaths get overloaded and they'll retract, right? If their programming is running the show, the program that says you can't retract, that's not okay. Not being social is not okay. Not listening to people is not okay. If that program is running the show, then an empath will continue to put themselves in positions where they're just getting more and more overloaded because this is what a good person does, right? So what you have now is you have a worldwide stay-at-home, in most places order, and that is the equivalent to permission to retract, right? And so, now the system goes, oh, I'm allowed to do that? I'm going hardcore, right? I'm going to turn everything off. I'm not going to answer my phone. And as the energies in the, in the plane oscillates or grow, then, you might find more and more reason to retract. So, again, space is not really the distance between 2 points. So even though like here in Ohio, it's not that crazy. It might be that you're picking up the excess out of Spain, or Italy. And so you'll just still feel this, real intense drive to retract and recharge, rest and recharge. And that's one of the things that's really important right now is that rest and recharge for everybody. So empaths in particular, but put a filter on your field for sure. And then take all the rest and recharge and retraction that you need. There's nobody now saying, oh, why aren't you coming to the party? So you have all the permissions in the world to rebalance the self, get some time on the ground and those sorts of things. Turn the phone off. Yeah. Make sense?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. And then Ray, I'm going to unmute you. Hi, Ray.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. What can I answer for you?
I'm not 100% sure that I am an empath.
Okay.
I feel like I have been for a long time. So I am in school right now, and I'm in nursing school. So going there, having all of the girls in the class, and I can just feel their energy, and it's very negative because they don't like the teachers and all of that stuff.
Sure.
And now we're doing online classes. Is that something that I can feel through that too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, it kind of depends. Like, so some empaths are really saved by the actual physical distancing, right? I mean, definitely there seems to be, we're all part of this collective consciousness. So we're tapped into that. When you have a group of friends, because they're part of your mindset, right, you're kind of tapped into them a little bit more than you might be the greater world. Same is true for your family. It's why sometimes people pick up things about somebody going on that's close to them that's not actually physically close to them, right? And we get that kind of intuitive piece. But, you know, when you go to a class, like even in this, so I'll give you a perfect example. So the big empath class that I give is an in-person class. Like you come to that class, and it's a little bit of a energetic hot potato is really what happens at the beginning of that class, because you know you're in there with all these other people, and even though you're not connected to them in personal way, you're in this class with them, so you're picking up all of that energy. If we met, you know, that group of people over a period of time, you'd kind of get a connection to them. That connection might be, I really don't like that person, or it could be, I think that person's really cool. But even if we went to online classes, there's still some level of connectivity. And when you tap into the class, you're tapping into that group, right? So maybe if your class started out as being online, you may or may not tap into the group energy, right? But if you already have an established connection with those people, then it might be, you might be susceptible to that still, you know. So it kind of depends. Sometimes we're helped by removing ourselves. That's why we do like quit going to parties and, you know, try to go to the grocery in off hours and not on Saturday, and, you know, because we are definitely somewhat conscious of the fact that when our field overlaps another person's field, we're more impacted. So even though we're picking up the collective conscious all the time, the field overlap is meant to exchange that energy. And rather than getting, 2 megabytes of information, we're getting 2,000 megabytes of information in an in-person setting. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. All right. I'm going to take one more, Jackie, here. We're going to do you, and then we're going to move on to the next thing. Can you hear me, Jackie?
Hi, yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep. All right.
Great. Good to see you. Thanks for taking my question.
Sure.
Been thinking about how to ask this. I'm taking another empath class right now at the same time, where the teacher is teaching about putting our egg around us, like as a boundary, and asking all the energy that's not ours to leave and our own energy to return. And I've been struggling with that, like really like, how do I then allow my own guidance in, and and I'm having trouble coming up with my egg. And I much prefer kind of the filtering you're talking about. It might just be that I took your class a decade or so ago. So, so I'm primed to that. I don't know. But I wanted to ask if you could speak to that, because I'm kind of struggling with, I know it's really what we think, what we believe, what we imagine is a part of it, but there's also some energetic stuff at play. And I would love your input on that.
Well, I mean, the fact that you took the empath class with me, a decade ago or so, you probably heard me talk about the fact that you can't create a barrier, right? You already knew that. So now when you go work with someone else and they're talking about an egg and they're referencing it in the way that is a barrier, you already have a program in your brain that says you can't do barriers. So, containment could be part of your equation. So in the way that you're using, thinking about that language. The other piece of it is, our defensive measures make us want to go brick wall, barrier, eggshell, whatever it is, right? That's what our defenses want to do. But when you're better balanced, you're more susceptible to recognizing what actually resonates, and from the looks of it, you're better balanced today than you were when you took that class, apparently, 10 years ago. So your ability to recognize something that doesn't resonate with you or something that would be problematic for your energy exchange is there. And, people don't have perfect language. The intention of your teacher, it actually appears to be good. But the language, might not be, or the concept that they have around how that works may not be complete or clear. And that's okay. They're doing the best thing that they can. But when you're in any kind of a class, as an empath, this will be really prevalent for you, whether it's a class of mine or a class that anybody else's that you're going to. Your system is going to react to information that you hear, right? It's going to fight, or it's going to retract, or it's going to resonate and say, oh my God, that's true. You'll feel validated. So, pay attention to that response that you're getting and recognize, like, am I having an emotional reaction to this because it's triggering to me? Or am I having a, hey, I need to relanguage that or look at that differently so that it works for me? I can't language, a single sentence is going to have umpteen words in it. Every single one of those words is going to have an impact on every person that hears it, and it's going to have a different impact on every one of them. So there's not a way in linear time to be efficient at all and language something for every single person that's in there. Yeah. So you have to accept the fact that the teacher, whoever that might be, or the person sharing, is languaging in a way that works for them, probably. Yeah. And maybe works for other people, but you might need to tweak it for you. And it's always good to ask in those occurrences. So like if you don't ask, maybe if you ask that teacher and she said, no, it needs to be an egg, you got to be a brick wall, then you get to decide how you want to deal with that, which, where you want to go. But for example, we were talking earlier about filter your field, and there's a reason for it being this exact language, right? So sometimes it does need to be that exact thing in order to work within the confines of universal rules, which there aren't very many of them, really, and they're not difficult to work around. But if you get your human conscious interests involved in it, you'll feel like you're failing all the time because you're languaging against the universal principles. But yeah, I think probably for you, just adjusting, as for any empath, really, just adjusting to what seems to work for you, and ask the question, ask the teacher, can I change this to this? And if they go, sure, why not? Or if they say no, find out why. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's just a relanguaging thing. Yeah, they resonate otherwise. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, hon. Okay, so let's move on to the next piece of this. This one is really simple. So, we talked a lot about the energy that's coming into your body and how that affects you as an empath. But our physical system is a food-based fuel system, really. So if you put gas in your car that's full of rust and debris and a bunch of crap, well, then your car's not going to run very well. And the same is true for the food that you put in your system. So, we're going to talk about types of food and those sorts of things in next week's class. But from an energy standpoint, you can actually change the resonance of the food that you're putting into your body pretty easily. So without getting too crazy into like all of the cyclical systems of the body, know that, there are chakras in the body. They're intersections of energy. There's thousands of them. There's some primary chakras down, big intersections down the center of the body. But there are these, and then there's these meridians, which most people have heard about through pressure point components, or acupuncture uses meridians, some other various modalities. Most of us are familiar with those. What most people are not familiar with are these cyclical systems that run in the body. So they're like wheels of energy. So if you take a watch apart and you look inside of it, it's got all of these gears in there. And those gears have to work together, right, to make everything run smoothly. Your body has these cyclical systems too, and they interconnect. But you can use those cyclical systems in some cases. And the largest, from a physiological standpoint, the largest cyclical system in the body is actually the one that runs through the legs. And energy is always a two-way circuit. So energy is never just coming into you, like in through the top and out through the bottom. It doesn't work that way. It's always a two-way circuit. Now, it may have a predominant flow, right? So most physical systems are going to have a flow tendency from left to right, which is kind of why a lot of people are right-handed, because it's the outgoing energy. It doesn't mean that left-handed people are running, like a polar component. There's other reasons for that, but the energy tends to run left to right in its predominance. So if you're picking a place on the left side for this big cyclical system, pick the ball of the left foot as your starting point. There really is no starting point on a circle, but you can make one up. And that energy would come up the left leg. And actually, I'll just back up and show you. So it would come, like this is my left here. And so let's, if we start at the ball of the foot, that energy would come up the left leg, and at the hip here, it would turn and cross the body, you know, through the hips. In women, it would be, you know, crossing the womb, but it's going to cross the bladder and the descending colon. So it's going to come over to this right side hip and turn and go down the right leg, go out the ball of the right foot, and then run through the ground or the air, whatever, you know, wherever your feet are, back to the left foot. So it makes this great big wheel of energy running. And your Hara line comes right down through your body here, you know, both directions. And this cyclical system is going to, think of it like a water wheel. So it's going to pick up energy as it comes across here. It will pick up energy off of this Hara line that it needs if you're trying to charge this system, right? It'll pick up energy as it goes around, like a water wheel. It will also drop off for, you know, into the Hara line, whatever's in the greatest good to drop off. Now, it may be dropping off some energy that's needed by the other cyclical systems, which is why connecting to the earth is so helpful through our feet. But it also may be dropping off junk, and that's gonna, you know, traverse out on the Hara line. So that's the biggest cyclical system. The reason for explaining it to you is because you're going to use the second largest cyclical system, which is this one right here, right? If you look at most cultures through history, they all have some form of hand position. They might have mudras, they have prayer, they might have, you know, sun salutations, all of these things associated with the hands. And if you are fortunate enough to find human representations for a lot of these religious components, spiritual components, connective components in history, they often also have their legs sometimes in a particular position. And that is because those are the two largest cyclical systems in the body. So the cool thing about this is that, you know, we can put our hands on people. You can put your feet on people too, but most people don't want you to do that. So, you know, using your hands is a good tool. And you know, you don't have to have your hands together, but it's probably easiest to start there. And I want you to try this. So, you know, if you're holding your phone or something, like lean it up against something so you can see and you can still try this process. Now, remember that energy is running left to right, right? So I don't know how it's showing on your screen, but you want to start with the palm of your left hand and just pick that as your starting point. And imagine that energy is, you know, coming in there from your right hand. It's just part of this circle. It's going to come up this left arm. It's going to cross here, and here it's going to cross the Hara line, right? And it's going to come over to the right, go down this arm, come out the palm of the hand. We've got our hands together. It's going right into the left hand, and it makes this wheel like this, right? So every time that energy crosses that Hara line, you can imagine that it's picking up energy. So you can literally build a charge in your hands through this process, right? And imagine that every time that wheel is going around, it's building a charge. Now, if you don't have your hands together, it's going to run through the air. And this is the same principle that we use a lot of times with the healing work that we do, putting our hands on things or connecting to things in that way. But this is your tool, right? This is what we're doing. We're building energy. And the principle here is that we're building energy for what's resonant for us. This is our body. This is our cyclical system. It's our Hara line, right? And we're just building energy for what's resonant. And you might feel that the palms of your hands get hot or get sweaty. Some people actually experience that in the opposite, and they'll feel that they get cold. So don't get too hung up in what it should be, right? What you might feel it, you might not. Heck, you might hear it for all I know. You know, depends on what your sensory skills might be there. So you're going to build energy in this way. So you can relax here for a second, and we're going to go back to talking about food. So everything's a vibration. And the food that you eat, let's stick with natural food for a minute. The farmer that grew your food, maybe did he grow that food on a field that had a lot of good, kind energy in it? Or did he somehow inherit from his father a piece of land to farm that, you know, was Custer's old battlefield? Who knows, you know, what happened on that land? And terrible things can happen on land, and beautiful things can happen on land, and the land not hold the resonance. So sometimes it's not a matter of what's actually happened there or happening there on a multi-plane function. It's whether it's just held in that space. So there's the energy of the land itself. And sometimes that has nothing to do with what's happened on the land. It has to do with where that land is on the planet. So if you live in Ohio, like I do, then food that is, and I'm resonant with Ohio. So that's one of the factors to think about. You know, I am acclimated energy-wise, resonance-wise to this location. If I eat food that was grown in California, which has a very different vibration, and I may love California and I may love its energy and it might feel awesome, but that energy is not going to acclimate very well in my body. So there's the land that it grew on. There's the farmer that grew it or farmed it, right? Is this a person who's loving his job, or is he effing hating farming? And the whole process of farming is feeling desperate for him and he's irritated. Or maybe he loves farming, but he hates his wife right now, you know, and whatever he's growing this season, you know, he's out driving the tractor and bitching around, and who knows, right? Maybe he's in love with the world, and so he's imbuing all of his cabbages with like awesome feel-good vibes. The problem is you kind of don't know. But that energy of the land is in that plant. The energy of the person that grew that is in that plant. The energy of the people that processed it. So if there are people running the equipment that processes those heads of cabbage, or the people that pick those almonds or those strawberries or those bananas, you know, what is going on for them? Are they desperate? You know, are they barely making it? Are they illegal immigrants who are working their butt off for very little money and not, you know, and they're living in fear? You know, that's going to be in or on your food to some extent. And then the energy of it getting trucked here. Who drove it? What did they drive through? Then it got to your store. Who unpacked it? Who put it? You know, it could be that everything was great. Farmer loved it. Land loved it. Farmer loved it. Trucker loved it. Everybody loved it all the way through. And the person that is pulling apples out of the case and putting them in the bin on your grocery store shelf is just having a shit day, right? And you come in an hour later, oh, those apples look pretty plunk, you know, to bring them home and eat them. So you're not just eating the nutrition and the physical substance, but you are intaking that energy. And this is why, you know, you'll see expressions in other cultures, longstanding expressions of gratitude. So it's good to be grateful, but also a lot of this is deeply rooted in changing the vibration of what you're taking into your system, right? So in most of the Christian cultures that I have seen anyway, and that may not be true for everyone, you know, but there's this very, oh, you know, let's pray for, you know, pray over our food. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you can look at someone and know that they're praying either in gratitude for their food or over their food. And you're welcome to do this way, right? You can do, what I'm saying is that they're being obvious. And you're welcome to be obvious with balancing your food. But it's important to know that it doesn't actually need to be that way, right? So I'm going to turn my camera down a little bit and show you something here. Just have a plate sitting on my desk so you can see, right? As long as my camera doesn't fall there. So let's say you're at dinner with your family and your friends, or maybe you're over at their house and, you know, food comes to the table and we're all talking. You know, it might look obvious or like a spectacle for you to, you know, put your hands here and, you know, chant some energetic thing. Like, you don't have to be that obvious. You can literally sit here at the table, you know, and build your energy like this while you're having a conversation. Doesn't have to be, let's put it up right here just a little bit. Well, forgive my camera issues there. So, you know, you can have a conversation. Half the time that I've been talking to all of you, I've had my hands together. You know, don't even have to do that. So I talk a lot with my hands. And there's no way for you to know if I've been building energy while I've been talking with my hands. It probably have been. Depends on what I'm doing. So you don't have to be obvious or a spectacle. You could put your hands in your lap, you know, but you want to imagine, again with the imagine thing, right? You want to see it in your mind's eye, this energy running. right? You don't have to build it up into some giant, like, cartoon version of, power plasma, your food, right? It can just be like, I'm just checking my connection. Sorry about that. Just checking my connection and making sure that I'm running that cyclical system. So here's the food that's on my plate. If somebody prepared that food for you, I guarantee you their energy's in it. If you prepared food for someone else, your energy's in it. So if you made your favorite meal for other people, but you were pissed off because they were late, and you cooked that dinner irritated and pissed off, it's in their food, right? And everybody's going to be impacted by that, right? The same as you're going to be impacted by it. If you're an empath, you're going to be even more impacted by that energy. So it's going to impact everyone, but you're a sensitive person, so doubly so, in your case. So the simplest way to deal with that is to, take your hands, and I'm going to turn the camera back down here just a little bit, and just put your hands, they don't have to be like this, right? You can just put your hands on either side of your plate, whether you're at a restaurant or at dinner at someone's place, and you're imagining, remember that our energy is running from the right hand to the left hand. Unless you are really feeling resonant with yours running the other way, you're going to run it from the right to the left. So it's going to come down my right arm, and I'm just running it right through this plate of food, right? Now, maybe in my mind's eye, it comes out just as a little spot, right? It comes out a little tiny spot, but when I bring it across my plate, I'm going to bow it out, right? Everything on here and back in my left, right? And whatever it's picked up, if it's going to transmute things, anything that it picks up that's not resonant for me, it's going to pull it up my arm, it's going to drop it off on my heart line to be, expelled. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing the food that is in front of me to the resonance that is in my greatest good at this time. My greatest good at this time. Because who knows what will be resonant for you at some other time. We're not trying to turn our food into something that's going to be resonant with us forever, because it's not possible, right? Because bananas could be resonant for you now and not resonant for you next year, something like that. So let's just get this adjusted there. Okay. So remember, what's resonant for me at this time. And you can do this with, food as you pick it up. You can do your carry-out food. You can go anywhere. You can even cook your own food and still put your hands on either side of it and bring it to the, a balance. When your food is in resonance with you, your body's going to assimilate that better. One, you're not going to pick up a bunch of junk from farmer, picker, trucker, store clerk, cook at the restaurant into your body. Whatever is on there, you're bringing into balance, right? You don't have to go through the part that says, like, oh, I'm getting rid of all somebody's anger, and you don't have to be that specific. I'm just bringing it into the resonance that serves me at this time. You'll pick up better nutrition from it. You'll have less upset stomach. You'll have less bloat. You'll have, less physiological ailments as a as a direct relationship with food. The other thing is that the vast majority of our allergies are actually emotional in their nature. You get a physiological response, but the allergy itself is actually an emotional trigger. And if somebody else that's been handling your food or made your food has put an emotion in your food that you happen to have baggage history with, right? It can trigger that allergic response. So maybe the person that picked your strawberries was really, really angry, and you struggle with people's anger, right? But you've never been allergic to strawberries before. So now you eat those strawberries and you get some kind of a response. You might get a physical allergic response. You might get an emotional response out of that. So bringing the food that you're putting into your body, and food includes, like, you're sitting around eating Doritos. So if it's processed food, it's still going to have all of these components and maybe, less nutrition in it, but it's still going to have all of those energy. So you don't just do it with grandma's Sunday dinner, right? You do it with your Doritos and your Nutty Bars and your Ho-Hos and your, whatever else you're putting in your system that you're putting in there by choice. So it doesn't matter if it's a beautiful, raw, organic, vegan salad, or it's a plate full of Oreos. You bring it into the resonance that's in your greatest good, and your body will start assimilating things better. And it's one less thing that your system then has to process out, because remember, there's physical toxins and then there's energetic toxins. So any energy that's in your system that isn't serving your greatest good is a toxin, and the system's got to process it out. Even the energies that are in your greatest good still are intended to be processed through the system. You're supposed to be able to be angry, but you're not supposed to carry anger all the time, right? It's an organic experience. It pops up in you, you have it, it processes through. So you're not meant to carry it all the time. Perpetuating emotions is a big part of the problem in this culture. So, you just want to make sure that, you're bringing things into a resonant state around that for you. Now, side note, we were talking about building this cyclical system. If you put this you build this cyclical system and you put your hands on somebody, you better make sure that your intention is to serve only the greatest good that is in, like only that which serves my greatest good, only that which serves that person's greatest good, and only the energies that are in our greatest good will pass between us. Because, this is no joke. And again, what can heal can harm, and what can cure can kill, and every variance there in between. So, when you learn a new skill set for moving energy in the system, and you find out, just how powerful this can be, it can be pretty easy for you to go, oh, you've got a headache? Oh, your stomach's bothering you? And that's a perfect example. Like, we are built, inherently wired to put our hands from this cyclical system on the parts of us that need balancing, right? Somebody said something shitty to us. Oh man, that didn't feel very good, or they hurt our feelings, or, our brain is overwhelmed. We automatically put our hands in whatever's in distress, because the cyclical system is built for that process. So put the already existing system that's wired into there, put it to use for you. Like, that's why it's there. It's not meant to be just knee-jerk reactionary. You get to be empowered with that and make a difference. So, sometimes bringing a plate full of Oreos into your resonance might end up registering better in your system than that vegan organic salad made by pissed off John. So it's not always just what the items are, it's the energy of them too. And, best case, combo would be food that is healthy for your particular system, whatever that might be, but it also in a resonance for your particular system. But honestly, sometimes what's resonant for you in the moment is the plate full of Oreos. So just make sure that those things are in a vibratory range that your body can assimilate best. It's going to uptake what it needs and process out what it needs as most efficiently through that. So any questions about any of that? Just raise your hand in the sidebar with that. I'm going to take a look at these questions that popped up in here. Does anybody feel tingly when they connect their circuits? Is that normal? That is super normal and awesome. It's not better, I guess, than not feeling that. Different people have different sensory components, and sometimes you might build into a sensory component. So you might not feel tingly in the beginning, but you feel tingly later. That's pretty normal. Hot, cold, tingly, vibration, any of those things. But that's a good sign. That's the nice thing about that feeling of hot, cold, or tingly, any of those things, is that it's a very physiological, validation. Got it. It's going to run this cyclical system runs whether you're doing anything with it or not. It's running all the time. It's part of your body. You cannot make it go away. You can't cut your arms off and make it go away. So if you didn't have any arms, that cyclical system's still going to run, this process. So you lost your arm, in the war or in a farming accident, doesn't matter, that energy system's still going to run. The wheel is the wheel. So you don't have to have those components, and you don't have to give it intention. It just works better if you do. Hot, cold, pulsating, those kinds of things, very personal. Yeah, it's a little bit different. There are some things that lots of people experience. So feeling hot in the hands is a pretty common experience. But that doesn't mean that everybody's going to feel it that way. So the energy wheel for the hands goes from the right hand through the center to the left. Ellen was asking this. So energy wheel for the hands goes from the right hand through the center. Yeah, I mean, there's a chakra in your hand. Let me see if I can find a pen. Well, this one will work. If you're drawing the chakras on your hands, I mean, I'm not a great artist here. I'm definitely not good at drawing with my left hand. But, you know, they're going to be approximately in the center of your hand. And, you know, you can put them together or you can have them apart, but that's kind of the connection point. You have this same kind of a chakra on the bottom of your feet, right? It's not really squarely on the ball of your foot. It kind of runs over into the arch of the foot a little bit, but that's about the place, you know, where it is. And these are all like secondary chakras if you're gauging them by size, I guess, secondary chakras. So yeah, right to left for most people. So from the right. But, you know, again, you might be a person whose system, you know, feels most resonant running the other way. Let's see. Brenda's got a question. I'm going to unmute you, Brenda. Hi, Brenda.
Hello there. My question is, can you make the food radiant for another person?
You can. Actually, that's a great question. So the cyclical system that you're running here, right, is connected to the Hara line. Sorry, I've got the volume turned up on that so that we can listen to something here in a little bit. But the Hara line. And your Hara line is one of the ways in which you connect to all things, right? It's part of your connection to the universe. So you can definitely use your Hara line and your cyclical system with intention to create food that is resonant for someone else. Now, you can do it specifically, like you can say, like let's say you're serving someone and you want the food to be resonant for them, like Uncle John. And so, you know, you can, as you're carrying the plate over, you know, I want this to be resonant for those people. Now, it's still those people's responsibility to make that food resonant for themselves. So you can't take too much responsibility for that. You are responsible for your end of that. So if you cook mindlessly, they're still responsible. You can cook mindlessly all day long if you want. There's, you know, you're not responsible for what Uncle John puts into his mouth. But if you're trying to cook consciously for a singular person that's not you, you could specify, you know, I'm asking that this food be resonant for Uncle John, whatever ways in his greatest good. If you're cooking for 6 people, you know, that food's going to have 6 different resonances that it needs. So the best you can do there is then to make the food resonant in whatever way is in each person's greatest good. But they're still responsible for their, you know, for their own version of that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. Okay, so let me go back here real quick and just look at these questions in the list. Zoe's asking. So Zoe, where are you in the list? Really, it's better if you raise your hand and ask those questions verbally so I can communicate with you. But I'm going to unmute you here for a minute. Oh, you still got yourself muted on your end. Okay. All right. Hi, Zoe.
Hi.
So you're asking about the vibration of eating animals and what the other side thinks about that, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
From an empath standpoint, or are you asking a pick my brain kind of question?
I watched the Pick My Brain yesterday, so it's probably it's 50-50.
Well, okay. So we need to stick to the empath end of it for this.
Okay.
Just to be clear, I don't want you to feel like I'm blowing you off in some way. But from again, your personal perspective is going to have a lot to do with what you know, just like we were talking about our imagination, how you may feel about the stuff that's coming into your system. If you're eating meat and you're fine with eating meat, you still want to bring that to your resonance. That's not any different than eating plants. from a universal standpoint, they're living things, plants. There's not anything better about a cow than a cabbage. And it is a beautiful thing that people are growing a consciousness to the awareness of other sentient beings. Like, that's a beautiful thing. So we don't want to take away from that in any concept. But to value one life greater than the other is actually not something that the universe does. So it doesn't make any difference from their perspective whether it's an animal that you're eating or a carrot that you're eating. They're all going to need to be brought to your resonance in your body, right? Animals are far more likely to be living in stressed environments that cause emotional components. So in other words, carrots can get grown in some pretty crappy soil, but it's not going to necessarily, it might feel more like duress than like abuse, right? And a chicken might actually have the energy of abuse in it. And that's where, you might see some difference. But if you're, getting food from an industrialized agricultural country, which is where most of our food comes from, most of that land is abused, literally abused. It's not cared for, it's not nurtured, it's not fed, it's not honored, it's not respected. Neither are any of the little living things on it. And so, there's still a level of energetic in it. So, energy of food matters. There's a difference between, how one of them might perceive abuse than another, and you might pick that vibration up in your field, but they don't have any preference. There are certainly people who are genetically wired to be more akin to vegetarian lifestyle or vegan lifestyle. But even in the carnivores, there's people who need to stay away from pork. Their bodies just don't work with it, or need to stay away from fish or something like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and does their bodies not work with it? Would their bodies work with it if they made the food resonant for them?
Yeah, well, you're going to have to deal with, yes. From a technical standpoint, yes. But resonance is not just, you have your biology, right? If your biology says, I can't eat meat, and you use this process you can make the meat more acclimatable, you can acclimate better to the meat, but it still might not be great for your system, right? So most people whose bodies aren't wanting meat aren't going to be eating very much of it anyway. But if you find yourself in a situation where that's what's in there, and you might struggle with that, then you can acclimate it. That's what I did with sausage for a long time. There were certain nitrates in sausage that I really had a response to. And so I just started reprogramming all of that. And it works most of the time. Every once in a while it won't work, but most of the time it does. So, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Okay, so we are way past our time here. So I just want to go to this last piece here and share it with you. And I had really intended, and I'm still going to try to do it, to pull it up online and let you see it. It's a little bit of a challenge. So, in the world of empaths, we take on a lot of energies that are not ours. We don't get that energy processed out. Sometimes we don't get the energy that we've taken up from other people processed out, our own or theirs. And we need assistance in getting that energy moved through the system, especially if we've been in overload or in overwhelm. And there's a great tool called EFT. It stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. It's a very well-known practice. It's used by a tremendous volume of therapists. It's an approved or accredited therapy tool. But EFT is a practice that often fails because it isn't If you're trying to redo a program problem, it needs to be done with a certain level of consistency. And that's not what we're going to be using it for today. But even if you're just dealing with it for a situational thing, it needs to be languaged properly. And most people, well-trained, well-intended, believe that they're languaging EFT properly, and they aren't. So there is a guy on YouTube. His real name is Brad Yates, and his username on YouTube is EFT Wizard. It's all one word. And he's out of California, I believe, and he definitely has his own website. You're welcome to go to that, any of those things. But EFT is a process of tapping, which is what you'll probably hear most people call it. In these meridians in the body, we have like these primary meridians that process energy and emotions. And if we tap on a point, now there might be 6 points on a meridian. We don't need to tap all 6 of those points. We tap a point on each of these 12 main meridians while we go through kind of a 3-part process. So this is my way of explaining EFT, and may not be how EFT practitioners might explain it to you. But in these meridians, that's where we get our programs for how to function. So our knee-jerk responses, we may know, oh, we shouldn't get angry about that, but our program response is to get angry. And now we've got anger in our system and it's not processing out, or we want to help it process, or we're trying to purge something, we need to process it out. So these points, and you tap on them, talk about the problem, stir it up and validate it, clear it out, release it and let it go, and then reprogram. And the reprogramming piece is the part where the language is usually messed up. If someone's angry, let's say you're angry and you want to get rid of anger, you'll say things, as most people would, like, I don't want to be angry, I just want to be happy, or I just want to be at peace, right? That makes sense. So if you think about that, when we talk about EFT, we're going to talk about the problem and talk about anger and stir it up. Then I'm going to clear that anger out and release it. And when I reprogram, I'm going to reprogram for being happy or for being peaceful. The problem with that is you're reprogramming from a rule, a knee-jerk response of anger, to a required new rule of happy. And the system doesn't want to do that. It wants to have the freedom to choose what's resonant for it. So programming from one rule to another rule, which is what a lot of people do or try to do, doesn't actually work. Well-languaged EFT, among other things, will talk about the problem, stir it up and validate it, clear it out, release it, and let it go. And when you get to this part about reprogramming, it will say, and I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this, and I could feel this, and I could feel that. Like, it'll give the system options for choice, right? And with EFT online, this guy that I'm going to show you this video here, whatever he's tapping, you tap. And I'm going to show you here in the palm of my hand, if I can get it laid out here. You don't have to beat your hand, right? You're just tapping, right? And if tapping is too bothersome, hold the point, right? If you get off on the points, maybe you're bawling your eyes out in an EFT and you know what the pattern is. He could be tapping, right here, but you can't see the screen. So tap the point you know, right? The idea is whatever point he's tapping, you tap. He says a sentence, you say the sentence. He changes points, you change points. He says a sentence, you say the sentence. This guy has over 500 videos online for free. And it's the only EFT practitioner I have ever seen the other side consistently recommend. They say that his language is divinely guided. So pretty much that's the guy that gets referrals. The beautiful thing about it is that most of these videos are less than 10 minutes. It's totally free. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you can literally sit on the toilet in Walmart and tap if that's what you have to do, right? Like, I'm overloaded, I'm going to the bathroom. You pull it up on your smartphone, tap away, and who cares who hears you in the Walmart bathroom. But you can take it with you anywhere. You can waiting on to pick up somebody and you're sitting out in your car in the parking lot and you tap it then. It is most efficient to tap for an emotion when you're having it. So if you're having anger right now and you want to process it through, or the situation is over and you think, I shouldn't be angry anymore. There's that shouldn't word, right? But you're still feeling something, or maybe you're tired of feeling abandoned, in your life, and you just got triggered. You can go find the EFT that is associated with that. There's a couple of things that I want to show you. So I'm going to share my screen with you here on the computer. I went earlier today, and on my new YouTube channel, I made a playlist. Now there's my videos that are on there, but let me just do this so you can see what it is that we're looking at here. Let's do this. We're just going to make this big. So can you all see that okay? Nod your heads so I can see you in your screens. Okay. So this is my YouTube channel, right? And I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but if you look right here, it'll say home, videos, playlists, channels, discussion. If you go to playlists, and I'm showing you this because I made this playlist for you all to utilize later. If you click playlists, it's going to pull up this one right here called EFT for Empaths with Brad Yates. That's the playlist that I made for you all. And as I find other videos, if I get time to do that, I'll add them to this playlist. So if you click this playlist right here, it's going to pull up the videos that we put in it, that I put in there. And you'll see that there are 4 of them. The first one is called Feeling Safe Again. And this is a crucial video for empaths and sensitive people, because whether you recognize it or not, the system is overwhelmed most of the time. And there's a sense of like victimization that's going on, for you. And so the system kind of inherently grows this sense of like, I'm not safe, right? Not only because you're picking up other people's emotions, but also because if you're empathic, you often pick up the crappy little feelings that they have about you when you tried to speak your truth, or the fact that they're lying to you. And there's this whole sense of not being safe. So, and it shows you right here in the corner how long these videos are. The first one here, Feeling Safe Again, is 7 minutes and 43 seconds. The next one is Feeling Others' Pain. The reason for putting the safe video again is because safety is at the core foundation of everything. If your survival wiring is triggered, and for most of you it probably is, you're going to have a really hard time making any progress if you don't at least try to address the feeling of safety first. So if you're going to do 2 videos a day, try to start out with the Feeling Safe video again, and then anything else that feels resonant with you. And then at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're getting triggered by something, you can look, you can run that too. But this Feeling Others' Pain video right here, which is the second one, these are written for people who are kind of obligatorily taking up other people's energy. And you might not see yourself that way. So sometimes there might be language in here that makes you go, that's not me. But don't change the language of this guy's videos, right? Just roll with that. Your system's going to know what it's talking about. It's called Feeling Others' Pain, Being Upset on Their Behalf, Weight of the World. Like, if there were a theme for empaths right now, that would be it right there. This other one I put in here, When Others Are Upset. The title's not that great, but I went through and listened to all the language in that. And it is a little bit similar to Feeling Others' Pain, but it's a little bit more targeted around that. So it's also a really good one to use. And then the last one I put in the list right here, if you can see it, is called Boost Your Immune System. And I did that because your immune system is so directly tied to your stress levels. When you are stressed, your immune system really takes a hit from a number of fronts. Stress, one, reduces the glutathione levels in your liver, which really affect your immune system. Stress also really upsets your gut flora, right? So your immune systems need a boost. On any given day, if you're empathic and you're unfiltered or you're overloaded, you're going to really benefit from anything that boosts your immune system, whether it's nutrition-based or energetic-based. So this is a video that he came out with somewhat recently, specifically for that. He does have newer videos out that are specifically for COVID and, not freaking out so bad there, that you can go to his page. So let's just do that for just a second. Let me pull up another window here and show you what his page looks like, because I want you to be able, there it is. as an empath, knowing how to use this man's YouTube channel can be literally save the day, save the party, save your relationship. So this here, what you see on your screen, is his page, EFT Wizard. And if you look up here at the top, there's a search window. If you use that, it's going to search all of YouTube. But if you come down here where it says home, videos, playlist, community, store, channels, about, see this little magnifying glass right here on the far right of this list? If you click that, it opens up a little window and you can type whatever your emotion is or your issue is right into that, and it will only search his page. So if we type in safe and hit enter, it's going to search just those things. And there's the first one, feeling safe again, tapping with Brad Yates. Everything that's tagged, is with some level of safe is going to show up. And you can kind of scroll through there, and you might be like, oh, actually, it's not a safety thing, it's a danger thing. And so you can look for a different video, Afraid to Heal. So there's a whole list of things in there for you to use. And again, most of them are less than 10 minutes. You just follow right along, and it will help clear that energy right out of your field. So, some things to know about EFT. You might start an EFT video and think, I'm not that mad, or I'm not that sad. And I'm going to tap this and I'm going to move this through my system. Or something happened today and it triggered you and made you mad today, and I'm going to go tap for it, right? And so he's talking about being angry, and you're tapping and talking about feeling, you following along. And the next thing that you are raging livid, pissed off about this thing your mom didn't do for you when you were 7. And then you start bawling and you have all this sorrow and abandonment, and you can end up like, this sounds terrible, but like worst case scenario is that you end up on the floor in a fetal position, bawling your eyes out, hyperventilating, can't see the screen, can't say the sentences. Leave the video running. Don't turn it off. As long as the video is running, your system will process it, right? Excuse me. If you can tap. If you can tap the point he's tapping, tap it. If you can't see what he's tapping, tap whatever. If you can't manage to tap, just hold your fingers right there. Can't see the screen, don't worry about it. Can't make the sentences, don't worry about it. Do the best you can, but leave the video running. If you stop the video, you have to start it over when you get yourself together. And then you're probably going to fall apart anyway. This is what happens sometimes when you're overloaded, or you've got a bunch of stuff stuffed in an organ somewhere or part of your body. And think of it like a train going through the desert. Like all these people have been in the desert for hundreds of years, and they are just dying to get out of there. But there's no train. There's no train. EFT is the train, right? And you start tapping and running a train through the desert. Now, you said, hey, this train is for anger participants only. But all of those sorrowful, abandoned parts in your system is like, well, we don't care. We haven't seen a train in 100 years. We're getting on there. So you could start tapping for one thing and end up really offloading something else, because that's your system prioritizing necessity over your conscious mind making a choice, right? The system's going to do what it needs to do. So let it roll. Pay attention to what you're processing, because you might want to tap into those videos literally later. But allow it to run however it needs to go. So just on a quick show of hands, I was going to run the Feeling Safe video again, pull it up on the screen here with you all, and turn my speakers up so you can hear it through my mic. It isn't really necessary for us to do that, and we could tap it together. But if you are, and we'll just kind of go with the majority rule, if you want me to run that, I'll be happy to do that, or you can go to my YouTube channel and pull it up and run that for yourself. It is a very good thing to start your day with. If that was your only morning ritual, you could only get one video in, Feeling Safe again is very valuable to you, because and especially if you do them in the morning. So remember, raise your hand in the app if you want me to run this video while we're in the class here. And if you'd rather just do it on your own and call it a night, that's perfectly fine too. Setting the tone for the day You know, I'm feeling safe. My immune system's running well. I'm not going to take on other people's energies, and it's okay for me not to take on other people's energies. Those are good things to start your day with, but you know, you don't have to do that. You can go through your day and come 3 o'clock in the afternoon, notice that you're starting to feel like somebody just did something and it made you feel resentful. Okay, I'm gonna go tap for resentment. You know, I don't know how long that video is, but he's probably got 7 of them, you know. So you can use it situationally. If you are using EFT for program problems, each one of you has a different number of days, you know, that you would need to do that. And that's something that we talk about, you know, in private readings. But, you know, if you're trying to ballpark it, I would say an average of 30 days, probably, for doing a video every single day without exception, without fail, meaning you are not missing it no matter what, every single day, that exact same video, if you're trying to undermine a program problem there. So let me just take a look at who all we have hands raised for here. Okay, so it looks like the rest of you are ready to call it a day, which I understand. This has been a super long class. Ray, Darlene, and Amy Carmichael, if you have a question about class, leave your hand up. If you were just raising your hand because it was for the video, you know, we're going to go ahead and let everybody do that on their own. Real quick, Ray, did you have a question, hon?
Yes. What would you say the best way is to heal yourself?
Oh, there is no simple way to answer that, right? Like I would say start with your particular positive mindset, the fact that you can heal. If you don't believe that you can, you're not going to get very far. Use your inherent cyclical system. But different people are going to have different illnesses for different reasons. So there's no real straightforward way to do that. So if you're an empath, filter your field. You can't work on healing yourself if every bit of your nutrition is getting chewed up with just managing other people's energies, and if you're not taking care of yourself. And filtering your field is self-care, right? It's also world care, because a better you makes a better world. But I would say to start with some of the things that we have here, and then, you know, pay attention to how you're talking to yourself.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Brenda, can you hear me, Brenda? No, I didn't unmute you.
Yes,
Okay,
I
Brenda.
can hear you.
There you are. Okay.
I'm familiar with EFT. My question is, can you tap for somebody else?
So EFT, I have heard EFT practitioners say that you can. The other side is cautionary about that. You know, it's just like changing the resonance for the food. Like if you put your hands on the other side of somebody's plate and say, you know, like, I think that Uncle John is angry, right? And I think he's kind of an ass, and I am tired of that. And I love him, and I want him to be well. So I'm going to imbue his food with all the loving energy, right? That's inappropriate. You can say the loving energy that's in his greatest good be available for him, but to determine what someone else needs because you think you know, or because, you know, maybe they've said, I'm angry and I can't get rid of it and I wish I had some help. They might be saying that, and you might be saying, I would love to help you. I will tap for you. Always remember to put into any of those kind of concepts only that which is in the greatest good. Because what they say they want consciously, what you think they want consciously, what everybody might think is the best thing may not actually be the best thing. And it's inappropriate to determine for somebody else what you think they should have. So cautionary statements around that. From a technical standpoint, though, like if you're a parent and like, let's take something, I don't know, I was going to say something that's, you know, like an immune system, but really sometimes it's people's greatest good to be sick, or in their greatest good to die or to suffer. So, you know, you can do that as long as you're saying, you know, only that which is in the greatest good will happen for them here. This is me putting intention into helping provide energy for them, you know, if they would like to access it, if they would like to use it, right? Rather than I'm going to heal you, right? Or I'm going to help you get rid of your sorrow. If you want to do something like that, it's really better if you say, hey, let's tap together, you know. But sometimes people can't tap, you know, they might be unconscious laying in a bed, you know, and you might be, you know, trying to help them process, fear or, fear of death or any of those things. So as long as you're saying only that which is in the greatest good, that'll work.
Okay, all right.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. We got one more, and then we're going to call it a night there. Jackie. Oh, there you are, Jackie.
Great. Hi, thanks for taking my question.
Sure.
We were talking about changing the resonance of food or with healing. How is that different, or is it not, than Reiki? Like, I just took a Reiki 1 and 2 class recently, so I've been playing with that. So I was wondering what you're talking about, if it's kind of the same thing, or if there's anything different with it.
Yeah, and they should have taught you that in your Reiki class, actually. I'm not trying to rag on your Reiki practitioners, but Reiki energy is intended to be an energy sort of specific for healing from a very specific source type. But I will tell you, from a functional standpoint, lots of people are like mixing the two together or using one over the other. But really, truly, in its very traditional form, Reiki was sort of the channeling of Reiki energy. I mean, that's the term they gave to it, right? If they'd have given it green energy, that's what we'd call it, green master. But they called it Reiki, and they gave each of the symbols, which is sort of a movement of energy, or an energy intention with that, that go along with that. The vast majority of people that I know that are Reiki masters or Reiki trained really mix the two. So they'll be pulling universal energy and Reiki energy, or they might not even know where they're taking energy from, and using the seiki, or whatever symbol they're trying to apply at the time. But Reiki, truly Reiki, is a standalone kind of energy. It's just exceptionally rare to see anybody using it as a standalone.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it helps me understand, I think, what I'm doing all along is what you're talking about.
Yeah, one of the great things about, some of these certifications and stuff is that, we often will have these skills or these abilities, and we really go get a certification just as a means for having a modality for utilizing an energy we already had, or to validate that in other people's eyes, which is, an unfortunate cultural consequence. But yeah, it could be a number of things.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, you're welcome. So that's it, you guys. I appreciate you sticking around. You brought great questions. Hopefully you all have gotten something out of this first empath tool class. I encourage you to filter your field and think of something that really works for you. Make sure it's only the energies that are in my greatest good can pass through. I look forward to you all having much less overwhelm in your lives, and feeling a little bit more empowered to move about in the world in a less victimized way, in a more personally strong way, to your own personal healing that you can bring to the table. Because when you're healthy, that's great, but the healthier you are, the healthier the whole is too. So again, the culture sometimes teaches that taking care of the self is selfish, but it actually is, in the best interest of everyone involved. So I applaud you for making the effort to try to take care of yourselves and other people around you, reminding you to do it in balance. And hopefully we will see all of you in the next class on Tuesday. In the meantime, keep your eye out for this video going up on the new YouTube channel. If you're not on the mailing list, make sure you go to the website at julienorth.com and put your name, your email address in there so you can get updates on what's coming as far as free classes or workshops go. And in the meantime, at least the first 45 minutes or so of this event did make it to the Facebook Live, and you can go watch that there. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and I will see you hopefully next Tuesday.